You know, I had a perfect childhood. I had parents that loved me. We didn't have enough money to complicate the childhood of a young boy. My days were spent playing football in the park, playing baseball in the front yard, or basketball in the driveway. And I remember those days, waking up early, going and playing with friends, and playing until I couldn't see the ball any longer. My mom would come to the front door and call me in to eat, and I would be so angry because I had to pull myself away for a few minutes. I learned to play hard, and I loved it. But I also was blessed with parents that taught me to work hard. They taught me to work hard, and I watched them my whole lives with a great example of hard work as they struggled and they worked to provide a good childhood for their children. They also made sure that it was important that they spent time with us. One of the things my dad and I did on a regular basis, we'd go watch high school basketball games together. That was kind of our thing, and I love that. There's one game that stood out to me more than any other, though, and I won't forget. It was at the end of the game, and as a 10 or 11-year-old boy, I was probably a little bored after sitting through 2 games, but just before the clock expired, a player on the home team stole the ball and dribbled the length of the court. And just before the buzzer went off, he jumped up and he dunked the basketball. And as a young boy, I was in awe. It's the first time in real life I had seen someone dunk a basketball. The crowd goes wild, and I remember I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, I wish I could do that." And his response to me, I'm sure as a father of a young boy, he had no idea that it would play a role in my life, the rest of my life. But his response is he looked at me and he says, "Chad, do you think he just woke up one day and was able to do that?" And he had talked to me about goal setting before and hard work, but it really hit home. And I realized, no, he didn't just wake up one day and was able to do that. It took work and it took dedication. And this was a focal point for me for a long time. It's something that I wanted to do. It was a goal that I set, and I read somewhere that if you worked your calf muscles, you'd be able to jump. So I went and I got a 2x4, and I took it out in the garage, and I did toe raises and calf raises over and over until they burned. I still couldn't dunk. And I had heard that if you jump rope, that helps. So I'd go down the basement and I'd jump rope. And I'd heard that if you do squats, so as I got older, I did squats and plyometrics. And as time went on, I could touch the net and touch the backboard, but I couldn't dunk. And then one day, my sophomore year of high school, I proved my dad wrong. I woke up one morning, I went to the gym, I stole a ball, and I dribbled the length of the court, and I dunked a basketball. What a great day in my life. I had worked for this. This is something I had dreamt of doing since that day in that old high school gym. But I don't think I really learned the importance of the principle my dad taught me until much later in life. As a young father myself, I was teaching school at the time by day. At night, I was going to graduate school. And I learned that I wasn't going to get a degree and raise a family and just wake up one morning and have it. It was hard work. And then I learned it even more fully when my oldest daughter was born. And right after she was born, we found that only half of her heart had developed. And as a young father, I had to lead my family through these heart surgeries and all these trials. But it always rang in my ear, you're not just going to wake up one morning and have everything good. It's going to be hard work. And then as my youngest son was born, and the day he was supposed to go in and get his immunization for whooping cough, we go to the doctor and we find out he's contracted whooping cough for a month. Every 15 minutes to 30 minutes, we see him cough himself till he passes out. We didn't know if we were going to lose him or not. That was hard on our family. But my dad had taught me, and my mom had taught me through example, that you work hard to work through trials. And life gets hard, and that's okay, because we work through it. And I'd assumed everyone had these lessons. And everyone knew this principle, that you don't just wake up one morning and have what you want. Much of my professional life, I was a principal of a middle school. And I remember many times students come in to me to complain about a teacher, and the complaint many times was, "Mr. Martin, it's hard." And I want to say it's supposed to be hard. That's why we're here. It needs to be hard so we can grow. I remember one time in particular, a mom came in very concerned that her daughter wasn't reading at the level she should be reading at. And we talked about some things, and she goes, "And before we go, I need to talk to you about her reading teacher. She's expecting her to read 20 minutes a night every night." And at this time, I was training to run a half marathon, and I thought, I wish this logic worked. because the training plan, every day I look at it, and I want to run this half marathon, but the training plan makes me run several miles each day, and I get tired. And I wish that logic worked, where if I got tired, I could quit and still achieve the goal. But it was interesting that we had parents teaching children that if it's hard, we don't go on. I had a parent call one time, and this was one of probably the most unique concerns I had brought to me. And she said, "Mr. Martin, I need to talk to you about your school lunch." And I thought, oh no, what's going on? And she says, "Well, my daughter likes to have the salad. And she gets the salad, and you guys don't cut the lettuce small enough, and she has to do that herself." I don't even know who our lettuce cutter-upper was. So I didn't even know who to go to. But that principle that sometimes we have to work for what we want, even if it's a salad. You know, Carol Dweck, in her book Mindset, talks about two different mindsets, a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And a growth mindset would tell us that if we have a challenge, we grow from that. And we look for those because we grow. And children with a growth mindset would seek out challenges, would seek out harder classes and trials to grow from. But those with a fixed mindset believe that they are just born with a certain level of intelligence or level of athleticism. And what you see is what you get. And so when they see a challenge, they want to quit. It's so important that we teach that growth mindset. If we truly want to change lives, we need to teach that we grow through challenges, that hard work pays off. In a book called Especially for Athletes, written by Shad Martin, my cousin, one of my best friends, and another good friend of mine, Dustin Smith, they talk about a principle that relates to this. And they say, seek to be your best, not seek to be the best. And they teach that by seeking to be the best at something, you have one of two outcomes, neither of which is positive. One, you're going to get frustrated, disappointed, because you probably won't be the best. And two, if you become the best, you're going to get complacent. It's like this. I have to travel sometimes for work, and I have to go to new cities. And we have the GPS in the car. And it always makes me feel so good about myself, because I punch in the address, and we go to it. I follow the direction. We get there, and it says, "You have arrived." And I get out of the car because I've arrived, and I feel good, and I walk around high-fiving people. I've arrived. And that's how it is. If we become the best, we've arrived. There's no sense in continuing to try. Let me illustrate this point. There's a guy by the name of Kobe Bryant. Has anybody heard of him? If you haven't, you need to get out more. He, arguably at his prime, was the best basketball player ever, or best basketball player in the world at the time. And one of his coaches, they talked to him, and he says, "It's hard coaching Kobe." Well, it would be hard coaching Kobe. But he says, because when practice is over and I want to go home, Kobe still wants to shoot, and he needs somebody to rebound. He says he works on every detail of his game, and he keeps working and working. Now, if Kobe's goal was to be the best basketball player in the world, he had arrived. There was no reason for him to keep going. But if it's to be his best, he continues to work, and he continues to work on those little details of his game. Now, secondly, my son and I, we love to go to watch the Utah Jazz play. Once or twice a year we'll go. And a few years ago, I remember we went. He loves to go early and go down and get autographs and watch them warm up down by the floor before we go up to the nosebleed section where our tickets are. But we get to go down there. And I remember watching the players would come out and shoot a little bit and stretch, but there was one player that stood out in my mind. And he would sprint from spot to spot. He would catch the ball from a coach and shoot and sprint and shoot and sprint and shoot. And he was sweating and breathing hard before the game even started. And I thought about this, and I thought about it a lot. I remember talking to my son about it, and then we went back the next year. I thought, I wonder, was that just a one-time thing? But no, he was there again. When the other players were coming and going and just kind of taking it easy, he was going hard. His name is Kyle Korver. Anybody heard of Kyle Korver? Some of you probably have. He's not like on the first name status like Kobe and LeBron, but Kyle Korver was never going to be the best basketball player in the world. Sorry, Kyle, if you watch this. But he wasn't. And if that was his goal, that would be frustrating to him. Because you have Kobe, you have LeBron, you have Michael, you have all of these guys. He wasn't going to be there. But he was going to be his best. And he did every day, before a game, during a game, at practice, he was going to be his best. And I guarantee you that he is. Also, last time I looked a couple weeks ago, he is leading the NBA in three-point percentage. So it does pay off. But I think it's so important that we teach our children and we teach ourselves that as we work for things, we can become our best. But I don't think if we're going to change the world, that's enough. I think we need to go a step further. There's a story that illustrates this. Alexander Papaderos, he lived during World War II, and as a young child, he was put in an internment camp, in a concentration camp. And after the war, he came out of the camp, and he decided he was going to dedicate his life to peace and to forgiveness. And he built this institute, and the place he built it was very significant. It was on an island where one of the worst atrocities of the war took place. When the German paratroopers came in, the townspeople came to stand up to them. They came with kitchen knives and hay scythes, and they were all lined up and shot. So he said, what a significant place to put this. So one day, as he was lecturing at his institute, probably a situation similar to this, at the end of the lecture, he says, are there any questions? Most of the time when that comes, everyone's packing up their stuff, and no one has a question. But one man raised his hand, and he looked at him, he called on him, he says, Mr. Papaderos, what's the meaning of life? And Alexander looked into his eyes to see if he was serious, and determined that he was. And he said, he pulled out a mirror out of his pocket, similar to this mirror. And he says, one day, as a child, after the war, I was walking through the streets of my hometown, and I came across a motorcycle wreck. And I found a broken mirror, all the pieces. And I tried to put the pieces together, but I couldn't. So I took the biggest piece, and I scraped the corners of it, and made it round. And I used it as a toy. He says, I love to take it and to reflect light into the dark crevices of buildings that don't see light. And I found great joy in this. He says, I've kept it with me ever since. He says, this has become a metaphor for who I am. I can shine light into the dark places. And he says, I'm a piece of a mirror whose whole design and whole shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of the world and the black places of men's hearts. And by so doing, I can change some people in some ways. And in time, maybe others will see, and they will do likewise. This is who I am. This is the purpose of my life. My message is that with hard work, as we work hard to reflect light into other people's lives, we can change families, and we can change cities, and we can change our nation. And in time, as we continue to do that, we can even wake up one morning to a better world as we reflect light. Thank you.